You've been told that you must find your own way. That strength means needing no one. But some nights, even the strongest feel hollow. And solitude stops feeling like freedom. This video is for you if you're quietly wondering, what if myself is not a solo mission? What if the way back is through connection, not control? What if letting go of me is how I come home? If any of that feels true, just stay. Let the silence speak what words cannot. It begins with silence, but not the kind that feels holy or intentional. Not the silence of temples or mantras or well-curated retreats. No, it's the silence of late-night kitchens, of walking through a house where the lights have long been off, of sitting on the edge of your bed with socks still on, and realizing you're not sure what you've been chasing all day. This is not the silence of monks. It is the silence of people who've run out of noise. Not because the world got quieter, but because something inside stopped trying to keep up. You didn't mean to arrive here. You didn't plan to pause. But here you are. The dishes aren't done. The inbox is still full. The people who rely on you still expect you to show up tomorrow. But for some strange reason, you're not moving. Not even trying. There's a stillness growing in your chest, not out of peace, but out of depletion. And it's in that depletion that something sacred begins to breathe. Because when all the performing stops, even for a moment, a deeper voice has room to speak. And that voice doesn't have goals. It doesn't care about your personal brand. It doesn't ask if you're growing. It doesn't even flinch at your regrets. It just sits right beside you, like an old friend who never left. And slowly, the room shifts. What was once a messy, unfinished life starts to look like a human life. What once felt like failure now feels like fragility, and that fragility is strangely beautiful. You notice things you forgot to notice. The way the light spills on the floor from the hallway, how your own breathing rises and falls like a tide you've always belonged to. For the first time in a long time, you're not trying to fix anything. Not your past, not your mood, not even the way you sit. And that, somehow, makes you feel more alive than any motivational quote ever did. Because aliveness isn't a peak state. It's not a dopamine rush. It's not the climax of your to-do list. Aliveness is knowing you're here, without needing to justify it. So you stay, not because it's impressive, but because something in you has waited years for this quiet. And now that it's here, you don't want to scare it off by becoming productive again. You just want to rest in this soft, aching truth. You are not a project. You are not a brand. You are not a failure waiting to become a success. You are a human who remembered, for just a breath, that presence is enough. No applause, no finish line, just this, a moment that doesn't need to be better than it is. Welcome home. There's a pressure in the modern world that doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, be more, do more, stand out. And if you can't, at least pretend. We live in a time that glorifies uniqueness, but often at the cost of wholeness. Everywhere you turn, there's a call to individualize your clothes, your values, your voice, your truth. Be yourself, they say. But what they mean is, be different enough to be noticed, but not so different that you make us uncomfortable. Radical individualism was supposed to set us free. Free from systems, from expectations, from inherited beliefs. And in many ways, it did. But freedom without belonging can turn into exile. We left the villages, the tribes, the intergenerational homes. We tore down walls that kept us small. But in the process, we forgot how to sit shoulder to shoulder with another soul and simply be. Now, we curate friendships like playlists. We swipe through potential partners like discount codes. We build personal brands instead of personal bonds. And yet we ache. Not because we're broken, but because the self, when isolated too long, starts to echo in ways that feel more like madness than meaning. We start to wonder, am I the only one faking it? Am I the only one who feels like an imposter even in my most successful moments? The answer, of course, is no. But it feels like yes, because no one says it out loud anymore. To need is taboo. To lean is weak. To admit you're lost is a liability in a world obsessed with maps. So we keep performing the solo act, even as we long for a choir. We post our revelations online, but forget what it's like to cry in someone's arms without words. We say, "I'm fine," so automatically we don't even hear the lie in our own voice. And slowly, the soul begins to harden, not because it wants to, but because it's been left out in the cold too long. What began as a quest for freedom has become a kind of armor, and now we don't know how to take it off. Because what if, underneath it all, we're not special, not unique, just human? And what if that's not a curse, but a key? A key to the kind of connection that doesn't demand performance, but presence. A kind of love that doesn't need you to be impressive, just honest. The tension isn't that we want too much. It's that we're afraid to want what we truly need. To belong without branding. To be seen without spectacle. To be held without having to earn it. And maybe, just maybe, the door back home isn't locked from the outside. Maybe it's been waiting for you to stop being extraordinary long enough to remember. You were never meant to walk this path alone. There once lived a monk named Cakkhupāla. His name meant eye guardian. And yet, in the end, he would lose both his eyes. But not his vision. When the rains came, those long monsoon months in ancient India when monks would stop wandering and stay rooted, Cakkhupāla made a vow to practice without lying down even once. 3 months. No sleep on his back. No rest and comfort. Only walking. Only sitting. Only stillness. He didn't make the vow for others to admire. He didn't post it on temple walls. He didn't ask for praise. He just chose a path that would test his resolve and offer no rewards but the clarity of his own heart. But as the weeks passed, his eyes began to fail. First a blur, then pain, then darkness. The physicians came, as they always do, with their logic and medicine and rules. "You must lie down to heal," they said. "It is the only way." But Cakkhupāla had already made a different commitment, not to his comfort, but to the path. He thanked them, and declined. The world outside dimmed, but the world within began to glow. By the end of the rains, he was blind, not by accident, by consequence, by devotion, but something else had happened too. Amid the pain, the silence, the unrelenting discipline, he had seen through illusion itself. He had walked past the craving for identity, for approval, for vision, and in the dark, he awakened. He became an arahat, one who is free, truly free. And then, as if to test his freedom, accusation came. "You've harmed insects," the others said. "You trampled life beneath your feet in the dark." But the Buddha said, "An arahat has no malice, no delusion, no intention to harm. Suffering follows the mind that clings." But Cakkhupāla's mind was clear. This is not a story about blindness. It's a story about what happens when you stop negotiating with your fears. About what becomes possible when you stop asking for the world's permission to stay committed to your inner vow. And it's a reminder that losing something doesn't always mean you're failing. Sometimes, it's proof that you've finally stopped running from the truth. Dhammapada verse 1. Mind precedes all mental states. Mind is their chief. They are all mind-wrought. If with an impure mind a person speaks or acts, suffering follows him like the wheel that follows the hoof of the ox. Dhammapada, chapter 1, the twin verses, verse 1. Source, Dhammapada commentary, story, "If thine eye offend thee, pluck it out." What if the self isn't something to build, but something to unburden? We spend our lives constructing identities. I am this. I am not that. I stand for this. I never do that. Each belief, a brick. Each trauma, a window sealed. Each dream, another floor added to the tower we call me. But what happens when that tower begins to shake? Not from an earthquake, but from a whisper inside saying, "I don't want to be this fortress anymore." Cakkhupāla chose stillness, not because it made him more spiritual, but because it stripped away all his roles, the seer, the doer, the follower, the fixer. And in the absence of all that noise, he found something most of us have forgotten how to touch. A mind that is not performing. a heart that is not defending, a presence that is not seeking applause. It's strange how we call it growth to keep adding but call it loss when things fall away. But what if subtraction is sacred? What if letting go is the real miracle? Our culture doesn't celebrate that kind of shedding. It rewards those who accumulate experiences, titles, even spiritual achievements. But the awakened ones, they don't boast their liberation. They don't need you to notice. They walk lightly, because there's nothing left to carry. They speak softly, because they no longer need to be heard to exist. They love freely, because they've stopped trying to protect an identity. And here's the most tender part. You don't have to become someone else to be free. You don't need to transcend your humanity. You don't need to be fearless, or pure, or perfect. You just need to get curious about the walls you keep rebuilding every time something real tries to reach you. What would happen if, just for a day, you stopped fortifying your self-image? What would happen if you let someone see the part of you that doesn't have it all together? What would happen if you sat in the dark, like Cakkhupāla, not with dread, but with reverence? Maybe, just maybe, you'd stop being a seeker and start being something truer. Not a better version of you, but a being that no longer needs to be better. Not because you've arrived, but because you've stopped chasing. And in that stopping, you begin to see. Not with eyes, but with the clarity that comes when nothing stands between you and the present moment. This is not about becoming. It's about unbecoming everything that kept you distant from peace. Let's begin again, not by doing something new, but by undoing the habit of rushing. Just sit. Wherever you are, don't change a thing. Don't fix your breath. Don't light a candle. Don't chase the mood of meditation. Just sit. With the awkwardness. With the unfinished thoughts. With the phone still buzzing across the room. Let all of it exist. And now, close your eyes. But not to escape. Close them like a door gently clicking shut. Not locked. Just resting. Now listen. What do you hear? A car outside. A refrigerator hum? Your own pulse. Good. You're not failing. You're arriving. Meditation isn't the absence of noise. It's the intimacy with what's already here. Now feel your breath. Not the breath you think you should have, slow, calm, pristine. No, feel the real one. Shallow or deep, erratic or smooth. It doesn't matter. This breath has been with you through every heartbreak, every meeting, every childhood mourning, and every late-night ache. It is your oldest companion. Let it breathe itself. Don't ride it. Don't lead it. Just feel it. The rise. The fall. Like waves that don't care who's watching. Now, for the next few moments, do nothing. If thoughts come, beautiful. You're human. If pain arises, welcome. It means you're alive. If silence falls, rest there. This is not about transcendence. This is about reunion. Reunion with a part of you that never needed to be wise or healed or strong to be worthy. This moment is not a performance. It's a remembering. And in that remembering, you might glimpse something ancient, something sacred, that whispers, I am not the doer. I am not the thinker. I am not even the breather. I am the space in which all this moves. Let that space expand. And if it contracts again, so be it. You are not here to conquer stillness. You are here to be held by it. No effort. No posture. Just presence. Just this. And maybe, if you stay long enough, you'll realize. The stillness isn't a place you enter. It's who you've been beneath the noise all along. If you stopped trying to be someone, who would meet you in that silence? If there was no story to tell, no title to defend, no image to polish, what would remain? Not your resume. Not your roles, not your history or your hopes, just the raw pulse of being. Would you recognize yourself? Would you soften? Would you finally hear the part of you that's been whispering beneath the performance? The child, the elder, the nameless witness, all waiting for you to arrive without armor. So here's the question you may not be able to answer. Not yet. But maybe you don't need to. Maybe the question itself is the doorway. If you stop trying to be someone, who would you feel safe enough to become? If this touched something in you, don't rush to name it. Let it sit. Let it breathe. And if, Later, a quiet voice says, share this. Maybe it's not just for you. Maybe someone else is tired of being a brand and ready to just be a human. Stay close. Subscribe if it helps you stay anchored. And when you're ready, come back. This silence isn't going anywhere.